Honestly, I didn't see a way out, Christian. I thought that I was gonna die that way, and it was around that time, this perfect storm of just adversity and challenges life was presenting me. Um, Really, it was a turning point in my life, because I kept telling myself that I had this addiction under control because I was just snorting pills at the time, right?
Are you running a marathon? Oh my god, I could never run a marathon. You sure about that? My god, a marathon is like 42 kilometers, 26 miles. I don't understand those people.
That used to be me, but not anymore. Welcome to the Marathon Podcast. My name is Christian Warwick. Warwick runs on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Really happy to have you here. Welcome back if you've been here before. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. I really appreciate you being here, all of you. Please give this podcast a review and follow it in your app if you haven't already. In today's episode, we're having Kallup with us, and he's a very impressive person. I'm so happy that he wanted to come on. He has a crazy life story from being an addict, heavy of that, to now being a fast marathon runner and doing ultra running in the way where he actually ran across the US. He's now planning on running across Australia. So, he has really changed his life, and I feel like he's showing us what running can be like, how much it or what it can mean to people. So I just really appreciate him sharing his story, and I think that this was a great conversation with him. So enjoy this conversation. It's Wednesday when this episode comes out, and that means that tomorrow is Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving week. I hope that you are enjoying it wherever you are. Obviously, this is to my US listeners, and to everyone else, just have an amazing Wednesday and an amazing week. Kallup, welcome to the Marathon Podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, man, I'm excited for the opportunity. I've been watching you pump out some really great conversations, and had my old coach Jeff Cunningham on, and you had Rob Jackson on, and so I had to reach out and try to make this happen. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I appreciate you reaching out. I want to kind of give you a shout out for that, because that's something that when you have a podcast, it's really hard to know if the audience likes it or not, right? Because I'm speaking to you right now, but other than that, there are no people here it's telling me that this is great or what they think. So when you texted me and said that you liked it, I really appreciated that. And I don't think people really understand. I don't know if you're aware of how much that means when you get a message like that. So just want to thank you for that.
Yeah, of course, man. I think just having those interesting guests come on, got some cool stories, or they're doing great things for the running community, and just having those really authentic conversations, man. You can't go wrong with that. So you're doing a great job, brother.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. And I'm always, fascinated by how much more fun it is when people like you reach out, and then I head over to your profile, and then I see ran across the US in 66 days and a 2:36 marathoner. You have some very impressive things behind you. Can you just present yourself, who you are, and some of the things that you've done? Because it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, man. I'll try to give the Cliff Notes version here, but I'm from Cherokee, North Carolina. I'm an enrolled citizen of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. I grew up here on the Qualla boundary, which is very similar to uh, an indigenous to Native American community reservation. And I struggled with addiction for 16 years, 15 years. I was involved in sports early on, played all the things, football, basketball, ran track. Got into running my 7th grade year, absolutely hated it. And I was terrible at it. My mom made me stick it out and finish the season. I came back my 8th grade year, and I had a breakthrough season. I won conference championship in middle school, and so I was like, "Oh man, I'm pretty decent at this running thing." And so I continued to run track through high school. Nothing crazy, no state championships or anything like that, but I was a decent runner, and played football through high school, played basketball, and I started to get mixed up in the partying scene. I had some things growing up, I experienced with, domestic violence, a lot of alcoholism around me within my family. And that presented some challenges for me. And so I think, I started to just get mixed up in that partying scene as a way to just kind of cope with my mental health, with, the childhood trauma that I experienced and everything. And it gave me this way of, escape and numbing the feelings and numbing the emotions and all those things. And so I eventually, I had the opportunity to run track or play football at the next level, but I lost those opportunities because I started failing classes, not really, taking my schoolwork seriously, and so I got kicked off the basketball team, and I wasn't able to run track my senior year, and so I lost those opportunities. And my identity was, as an athlete. That was the only thing really keeping me, on the straight and narrow and on a decent path in life. And so once that was taken from me, I was kind of just wondering. I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. And so barely graduated high school. I've got two sons. I had two sons with two different women after I graduated, and consequences of my actions and struggling with addiction, I was not able to be a dad to them. And so it just snowballs, and that's the thing about the disease of addiction, right? It's patient, it's cunning, and it just continues to it's a progressive disease, and you just find yourself doing things that you never thought that you would be doing. And so, I used everything that you could think of basically, you know, snorting cocaine, smoking crack, doing meth. And, I started using at an early age. And I was like, first time I ever took meth was, I was 16, and it was before a football game. And so I just continued to progress, in my addiction after graduating high school. And by the time I was 23 years old, I was broke. I couldn't hold down a job. I was ruining, burning all the bridges with my family and my friends. And honestly, I didn't see a way out, Christian. I thought that I was going to die that way. And it was around that time, this perfect storm of just adversity and challenges life was presenting me. Um, Really, it was a turning point in my life, because I kept telling myself that I had this addiction under control because I was just snorting pills at the time, right? And so I was like, as long as I'm not shooting up, then I've got this thing under control. And around that time, my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and when I got that news, man, it just devastated me. And I went and done the only thing that I knew how to do to cope with life, and that was to use more drugs. And so I put this barrier up for myself and say, I've got this under control as long as I'm not shooting up. And then I get this news about my dad. And then the only thing that was going in my mind and my best thinking at the time was the only thing that's going to give me a little bit of, alleviate some of that pain and that heartache was to shoot up. And so, my youngest son's 5 years old at the time. He's living with me, and I have like these God moments and throughout my life, and this was one of those moments where I'm sitting in a bathroom, I'm staring at this syringe, and I'm in there for a long time, and I'm trying to talk myself out of it. And I'm telling myself like, how did you get here, Caleb? Like you're literally about to stick this needle in your arm, and when you do, the game's going to change, and there's no turning back. And so around that time, my son starts knocking on the door. Dad, Dad, what are you doing? And I lay a towel down at the bottom of the door, and I shoot up, and it was off to the races for the next 7 years. Um, Again, I was my addiction just got so out of control. I started racking up charges. I was stealing. I was like trying to, hit these little, like these side hustles to try to fuel my habit and everything. And I couldn't, there was no way I could hold down a regular job. I would show up for a job and work a week or two, collect a paycheck, and I wouldn't go back. And so dude, this happened. This went on for years and years. And my dad passed away, from his cancer after fighting for 3 years. But before he passed, man, a couple of days before he took his last breath, he called me into his hospice room. And mind you, I'm withdrawing and I'm strung out, and all I can think about is the next fix. All I can think about is going and scoring me some dope. And he tells me, he said, "Son, you're gonna beat this one day, and you're gonna do some great things for our family, for our community, and for the world." And it was God speaking through my dad. And I didn't have the eyes to see it or the ears to hear it in the moment, but I remembered those words. They were so profound, and I just had sweat beads dripping down my face, and I was so sick, and I just remember thinking to myself, like, no, I'm just a junkie, and I don't even deserve to live right now. I don't even deserve the breath that I'm breathing right now. Just the shame. The shame was weighing me down and consuming me. And my dad passes away, and I go straight back to it, straight back to the madness. And for the next 2 years, man, I was so reckless in my using. I tried to commit suicide numerous times by overdose, and I had a much larger purpose in life, and I didn't realize it at the moment. But God was just keeping me alive for the things that I'll be sharing here in a few minutes. But in 2017, I get locked up, and they set my bond so high, I knew I wasn't getting out for a while, and so I started to dry out, started to kind of think a little bit more clearly. And for the first time in my life, I started to pray, and I wrote out a prayer. I still have it written down. I've got it in my hutch over here. I've got it put up, but I write out this prayer to God, and I'm like, God, if you're real, show me that my dad's still with me somehow. And a pastor walks in a minute later. He wasn't even supposed to be there that day. He comes to the pod that I was in, didn't go to any other pod. And it was when I first laid eyes on him, Christian, it was such a striking resemblance of my dad. It stopped me in my tracks. Like, he had the same mustache, the same shirt. Um, his eye color was the same. He's around the same age as my dad. Same type of pants, belt. His watch was on the inside of his wrist. And he came and he shared the gospel with me, and he told me that he's like, you have been spared because you have a much larger calling and purpose for your life, and the only way that you want to beat this addiction is if you give it to God and you stop trying to fight your way. And I took that message, I took it to heart. I gave my life to God in that moment, and everything changed. I still tell everybody, I had the most exhilarating feeling of freedom I've ever had in my entire life, and I was locked up in a county jail. And I
Wow.
knew everything was going to be different, and I knew that I needed to step into this person that God had called me to be, and I needed to use my experiences, my stories, and my losses, and all the things that I've been through, the adversity and these near death experiences, and use that as a way to inspire other people. And we have this saying in recovery that whenever you're in a hospital, or you're locked up, you're in jail, whatever, that your addiction's out in the parking lot doing push-ups. And that's kind of the mindset that I took, like, I've got to get stronger. I've got to focus on how I can heal emotionally, how I can get stronger physically. I need to have some goals. I need to surround myself with a positive community. And man, I just started grinding. I started grinding when I was in jail. I started doing jailhouse workouts. I started walking my running journey was me running and walking these steps in the county jail. That's how I started. And I would do that, every single morning. I would get up. They do med call at 6 a.m. You get up, you make your bed. They come around and they check our bunks and everything, make sure it's straightened up, make sure our beds are made. And everybody else would go to sleep, Christian. And I had that mindset of like, man, I've got to put in the work, cause that addiction's out there waiting on me. The real work starts whenever the doors pop and I'm released from here. So how can I get prepared? How can I get ready for that moment? And almost every morning, the lights would come on, med call. I would get up and I'd start walking. I would start walking, and I would start thinking about, just really like dissecting my life and seeing how I could use all the things that I'd been through for something good. And I was, doing rows on the bunks, and we were doing burpees, and we started to build like a little community in the pod that I was in with the guys I was doing time with. And Around that time, I seen a newspaper article. My tribe here in Cherokee retraces the Trail of Tears route from North Carolina to Oklahoma, and they do an annual bike ride and it's a remembrance bike ride in honor of our ancestors. And I was like, man, that's it. When I get out of here, I'm doing that freaking bike ride. That's going to help change my life. I can put in the work, I can get fit, be a part of something, be a part of a community. And, I get released after doing 6 months in the county jail, and I go apply for that bike ride. And they tell me that I couldn't do the bike ride because I have a felony drug conviction on my record. So that was one of the stipulations. So I'm like, well, if you're not going to let me ride the bike, then I'll just run it. I remember going to my tribal leadership, try to get the rule changed. They wouldn't change the rule. And I'm standing in front of, mind you, here I am just coming out of jail. Um, I'm 60 pounds heavier than I am now. I'm out of shape. I'm just kind of getting back into fitness. I'm really unsure of myself, but I had a goal, man, that I really wanted to achieve. And I'd be damned if I was going to let anybody tell me I couldn't do it. So they told me I couldn't ride the bike. And that's when I didn't even plan to say it, but I was like, if you're not going to let me ride the bike, then I'll run to Oklahoma. And I was like, oh shit. Like, I can't believe now I said I've got to do it. Right. Um, and so that was kind of like my introduction to running. When I first got released though, I knew I needed to do something hard. I wanted to do something challenging. And so 8 weeks post release, I did an Ironman 70.3 on basically no training. I didn't do any swimming. I was running just a little bit. I had a bike that I got the day before I went down. I done it in flat pedals. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. No experience, not knowing what the heck I was doing. Um, just to kind of give a little context, man, I was the first wave in the water of that Ironman, and I was the last person to get out. 1,800 people passed me up on the swim, and I just kept fighting, man, and I just kept remembering where I came from. I kept remembering all the things that I had to overcome to get to that moment, and none of that triathlon didn't hold a candle to the difficulty and the adversity I'd faced in life up to that point. And so that's kind of how I frame all these challenges and all these runs that I've done over the years. But back to the run across the Trail of Tears. I trained for 6 months for that. I ran 800 miles. Started here in Cherokee, North Carolina, and I ran to Tahlequah, Oklahoma. And that's kind of when I started the idea for the nonprofit and for the things that my wife and I are doing today. And we'll kind of get into that. But um, yeah, that's how I started my whole running journey. And that was in 2018 when I completed that run. And we can kind of dive into all the things I've been doing up until today.
Caleb, this is I almost want to address the listeners when saying this, that just within these first 15 minutes that you and I talk now, I feel like we can already say that this is a much more important talk or conversation than running is, or at least running performances and results. But it also kind of proves, a lot of people say that if everyone ran, the world would be a better place. And that running, we hear stories about running helping a lot of people. It sounded like, the first thing that happened was that maybe prison helped you in a lot of ways, in terms like that, together with what your dad said and that moment in jail, and all of that kind of just accumulated to I don't know if you would call it like a moment of realization or change for you there. But I want to thank you for sharing this. It's really special. And I want to ask you, if you, like, before we go into the running part of this, when you look back, can you still like remember the moment when you were like, okay, now I need to change some things. Now it's like up to me to make these changes, and I want to do that? Because I think that, I have friends who've been dealing with addiction, and I know that I've been trying to help, right? and it's almost impossible because unless they really want it themselves or unless they are ready themselves, there's not much I can do. And it could be that it's appreciated, but it it's clear that there's nothing I can do unless they're motivated. And it seems like you kind of found that motivation at some point. So do you remember that moment?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was definitely I started to gain some clarity and had some understanding of all of the hurt, the pain, the heartache, the disappointment that I had put on my family, my friends, myself. And unfortunately, you can't will somebody into willingness. Unfortunately, it takes, people are different. You got to hit that bottom. Some people are very low bottom addicts and alcoholics, and it takes them having a near death experience or numerous near death experiences until they come to the realization like, oh my God, I need to make some changes here. And I was one of those types of people. And it took me overdosing 6 times. It took me, going in and out of jail numerous times and just accruing a lot of criminal charges and a criminal record before I had that aha moment and understanding that if I continue down this path, I'm gonna end up in prison or my family's gonna be burying me. That was the only 2 that was the only 2 places, or I'm gonna get into recovery and make some changes, right? And so, it's until the pain until that pain of staying the same is less than the fear of change, nobody's gonna change. And so, people have to get to that moment and that realization, unfortunately, on their own. In the meantime, you know, if it wasn't for my mom continuing to love me and be there for me and continuing to speak life over me, I probably would have. I definitely would have ended my life much sooner. But my mom always, she told my dad, like, my dad asked her, "Don't ever give up on him, no matter how dark, no matter, no matter how lost he may seem. I need you. Like you got to keep showing up for him because he's going to be somebody one day." And so she took that promise to heart, and she always did that for me. And so I think, like, as people, I lost my sister to overdose in 2019, and out here I am living this new lifestyle and doing all the things that I was doing in the community and changing my life. That wasn't enough to save her. That wasn't enough to help her change her life. And I lost my aunt during the run. I lost her to complications from her drug use. She had endocarditis. She died from a heart attack from her shooting up. And that's why I was running, to share my story and to inspire my family, my friends, the people that I love, my community. And people have people unfortunately can and will destroy themselves no matter how much we love them. And that's the sad part about this disease. But we just got to keep fighting the good fight. We got to keep standing in the gap for them. We got to keep letting them know that they're loved and valued. And so yeah, that's always the advice. There's no magic bullet to this. It's just, man, just continuing to speak life over them and letting them know that you love them and you're there for them.
Yeah, thanks. That was gonna be my next question, but you answered that perfectly because I think that it can be really hard, right, to see your loved ones struggling like you explained or described that you did, right? And you feel like you want to help, and yeah, I want to say thank you for saying that, because I think that a lot of people might find themselves in that situation too, to love someone with that, like you said, the addiction, the disease, and just to know that love and care can sometimes be enough, although it might not be. We might not see that it's appreciated, but it is appreciated after all.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you went from being an addict to slowly starting to work out. And I have a question that I've kind of always been wondering when I hear, it's not very often I hear stories like yours, but whenever I hear them of changing you know, you changing your life is one thing to get out of addiction, but the other is to get into the shape that you're in now and being so fit. And I know that after Christmas, if I've been unhealthy, like had a couple of beers every day and I had some candy, I feel rotten and I feel like, oh, I need to start working, and my body is not really responding to training the way it usually does. How is that when you start working out, start pushing your body after years and years of addiction?
Oh man, it was honestly, it definitely filled in the gap of, not using drugs and alcohol like I had in the past. Like, I mean, it was definitely the high that I was needing. All the things that come along with the runner's high, all the things that come along with training, the self-confidence, the self-esteem, it started to give me those things back. Like I said, I was 60 pounds heavier than I am right now. And I had a lot of scarring from picking and, using and staying up for days and days at a time. And, I just started to see myself heal. Like I just started to look healthier, to feel healthier. I just started to, like I said, just really be able to be proud of the person looking back at myself in the mirror, looking back at me in the mirror. And so, that was some of those early benefits of like, man, like I feel good about myself, like I have so much more energy. This is kind of, this is definitely helping that desire to go use and to go get high. And so I definitely very, very quickly became addicted to movement, to exercise, to running. And it's honestly the joy and the way it's made me feel, the confidence, self-esteem, the community, all the things that come along with it, my the growth and the progression, that's just the byproduct of those things. Like if we don't love what we do and we're not having fun with it and we're not getting to spend those moments with our family, our friends, and the running community that we have for ourselves, then it's all for nothing. Like you're gonna burn out, and it's you're not going to be able to continue to perform at a high level. And so all those things started to happen very early on for me, and that's definitely one of the huge reasons for my progression in my running journey.
So would you say that even though your body was, because I would assume that it was pretty like beat up after all those years and you were not in the shape of your life when you started working out, but even though you were at that, like what I would assume a very low fitness level,
Mm.
it still felt really good because it was such a big difference from just where you were and that lifestyle that you had before.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you did mention, and this is something that I'm very curious about, because you were saying that when you approached this bike tour or trip, you were saying something about you were approaching it and you felt very insecure about yourself. You were heavier and all of that. How did running change the way you looked at yourself and also your confidence?
Well, again, I think it just goes back to who you become in that process. I think it's you setting a goal and you keeping that promise to yourself, and executing the training that it takes to achieve that goal. And that directly correlates to the self-confidence, the self-esteem. And you learn running's a sport of failure. Like, we set these goals, these time goals for ourselves, and very rarely, like unless the stars align perfectly, we have a good day, do we go out and we hit those goals, right? Like most talk like in my experience anyways, like there's been there's from 2021 to 2024, I mean, I was chasing a 240 marathon. I failed at hitting a 240 marathon numerous times. But you learn how to deal with disappointment and failure. And that just helps you. I mean, that correlates over into everyday life. You use that disappointment and failure as fuel to become a better, more strong, resilient person. And so setting these goals very early on, running the Trail of Tears, training for that, achieving that goal. The next thing, like I want to, I started getting into ultra marathons. I want to do a 100-mile race. I failed at doing 100, and I put air quotes, but like, yes, I failed at hitting the goal, but who did I become in that what did I learn in the process, and that's how we win. Like, we learn from that. We get more resilient, we get stronger, we get more mentally stronger, we get more grit. And so I'm learning all these things, and I'm developing all these areas in my life. And I didn't hit the 100-mile goal for three attempts. I tried to hit 100 in three different attempts. um but yeah, I mean, I think it's all a direct correlation to the self-confidence that I was experiencing in life. It goes back to setting these goals, adhering to the process, being patient, delayed gratification, all of those things. I never knew what that was. I mean, for years in addiction, it was all about instant gratification. It was all about escaping. It was all about running from my feelings and from my emotions. And so running made me face all that. Running made me face all those fears and emotions, and being alone with my thoughts in my head and everything. And so, I mean, it has helped me tremendously become the person I am today.
Yeah, and that's what I want to get, into now. And I don't really know where to start here, so you might have to help me out because there are a lot of things that you've done. And yeah, I guess I will just leave it to you because you were talking about the marathon. Obviously, you have a very impressive marathon um, PB, but you also have some very, very, very impressive things that you've done, which are much longer than the marathon distance. So where do you want to start?
Man, I'll start with just how difficult it was before I really started to see those times drop and the progression as a runner. When I first started, Christian, my leading up to the run, the Trail of Tears in 2018, I did the Badwater Cape Fear race in North Carolina. It's a 51-mile race on the beach. And I was looking at the times. It's a 14-hour cutoff. I came in second to last. I came in at 13 hours and 40 minutes. I did a 50K around the same time, and I came in dead last. They were breaking down all the equipment. They were getting ready to head home. I had to walk the last two 10K loops because I was so destroyed. Um, and I also ran my first marathon during that time, and I ran 5 hours and some change. I was one of the last guys out on the course. And so that's like how I started. Like, I sucked at it. Like, I was terrible. I had to walk a lot more than I like to admit. I doubted myself so much, but I got across that finish line, and I kept the.
And can I ask you then when this happened, like, or when you were like struggling to get through the marathon, you had to walk all of that, because now I know that you've been running much more and you've been running faster. At that time, what made you keep on pushing? Why did you want to keep on running?
Because it wasn't about the times for me. It wasn't about the times. It was
Love
the
that.
it was the man that I was becoming in that process. It was continuing to show up for myself, and just I'm the type of person that has to have something on the calendar. I know some people aren't like that. I do have some downtime throughout the year, but I'm the type of person that is very goal oriented and goal driven. And so, that was one of the things that just kept me pushing. Like, okay, this is what I ran today. Like, how can I get better? And it was the honestly, Christian, it was the healing, man. It was the joy that running brought me. And that is how I'll be able to continue to show up years and years and years, and running thousands and thousands and thousands of miles over the last several years, because it wasn't about the time. It was about what running was giving me as a person, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Um, it was the thing that outside of my relationship with God, it was the thing that was helping me transform into a man that I could be proud of. And that's
I
the
love
thing.
love to hear this. This is so good. And one thing that I think the thing that I love the most, and that's not necessarily something that I'm good at personally, but the fact that you were able to build your confidence and feel better about yourself and look away from results times, and what you said, it was kind of building your character, right? And
Absolutely.
I think that that is something that we all can learn a lot from. Like, I know with myself that I get too caught up with times and results, and that is kind of what gives me the pleasure, or that what brings the joy to my life with running. But I just love hearing what you're saying, because then running becomes something so much bigger. It doesn't matter if you win the Boston Marathon or if you finish last in your local marathon. It's all about building that character and getting a better life because of running. So yeah, just wanted to, sorry for interrupting you, but I just wanted to say that because it was great.
Yeah, I think that as runners, we're very a lot of times we're very type A, and we get so attached to being results oriented. And for me, it's always been about being process oriented. It's all about, what is it going to take? What steps do I have to take to get you set the goal, you forget the goal. Now what's the process that I have to adhere to and execute on? What is the standard, the culture that I have to live by? Those are the things that's going to help us get to the goal, right? And so, for I think it goes back to just for me, it was running from a place of gratitude. Running from a place of gratitude and joy, and the person that I was becoming throughout that process has gotten me the times that I'm to today. It's just a byproduct of me just loving the sport and loving what it provides to me as an individual and as a man.
And then it sounds like at some point on this journey of yours, you you probably then, based on what you're saying, the results were never really like your main focus, but you started chasing some better times, like the sub 240 marathon and running across of the US. When you did these things, what came first? What did you do first in terms of this? Did you start chasing the marathon goals first, or did you start doing these super long runs first? What was that?
So I actually got into ultra running first. I was doing 50-mile races. I was chasing the 100-mile buckle. I did a couple of last man standing events. Um, Actually, I did one last man standing event, but it was around 2021 that I was like, you know what? I wanna work on something different. I wanna work on just getting faster. And so I hired Jeff, the great Jeff Cunningham, in 2022. And that's when I started to get really serious about my training, about, understanding training philosophy. I wanted to get more serious about just learning the sport. Got into coaching around the same time myself. I started coaching, doing personal training and run coaching December of 2021. And like I say, I hired Jeff in very early 2022. And so we started working on training for, I think our first marathon together was Missoula in 2022 in Montana. And I ran a 2:47, I think, in our first marathon together. And so from that
Wow.
point on, it was like, okay, now 2:47, since I just achieved that, like how possible is 2:42, sub 2:40? And so from summer 2022 until recently, I was chasing that sub 2:40 race. Um, and that was a game changer for me, as an athlete, was hiring a coach. Hiring a coach, it meant a lot to me, so I'm gonna invest in that. I'm gonna put some skin in the game. I don't know hardly anything when it comes to running at this point. when it comes to training philosophy and all those things and zones and intensities. Like, it was all so new to me. So I was like, I want to give the reins over to somebody else. If I truly want to get better, then I need to invest in this. And so Jeff and I started working together, and we started slowly just cranking down my marathon times. Um, I think I ran the following year, no, excuse me, fall of 22, I ran 240 at Indy. Boston 2023, I ran 240. And then I went back. I can't remember. I went back to Missoula. Had a really difficult race. Travel. I didn't get a whole lot of sleep the night before, and I ran 245 that day. Um, I go back to Boston, or no, I go to Asheville here locally in North Carolina, and the whole goal for that race was to win and to run 240. I ran 241 at that race. I go back to Boston like 3 or 4 weeks later. I was super beat up and fatigued. And I told Jeff, I was like, "Hey, what do you think about shooting for 240 again?" He was like, "I don't know, dude." He was like, "You just raced really hard. I don't know if your legs are going to have it, in 4 weeks." And he was like, "But, rip it and see what happens." By mile 5, I was calling my wife, and I was like, "It is not my day." Like, I don't know. Like, there's no way I'm going to struggle to even finish this race. I ran 247, 2024 at Boston, and I ended up making a coaching change, and I just wanted to switch things up. I felt like I just needed a different stimulus. I wanted to work with a different coach, different philosophy, and just see how I did. So I went with a local guy here in Asheville. His name's Randy Ashley. He coaches one of the top high school cross country teams in the U.S. right now, Christ School. And Randy and I started working together. We switched up my training. He had a just totally different trainer, coaching philosophy. I responded well to that. I went out and ran 236 at Indy last year, almost a year ago today. So that's kind of been
Wow.
my marathon progression. Lots of 240s, 241. Like, yeah, I've been sitting in those 240s, and I chased that 236 goal for over 2 years.
What do you think was the biggest change that you made that, since you were then struggling around that 240 to 245 and then suddenly making it? Do you have something that you think that, okay, that is a big change that I made that really made a difference?
You know, I wouldn't say that Randy had the magic bullet. I wouldn't say it. None of our marathon builds are in silos. We keep stacking fitness on fitness on fitness, right? And so I feel like I was due for a breakthrough performance, anyways. But Randy and I did do some things differently. He was really big on a lot of cadence and turnover work in a fatigue state. And so, I'd be doing my 10-mile base runs and, getting an hour plus, hour 20, hour 15, hour 20 minutes into my run. And then we would rip 10 strides at the end of the run, and just getting that, working some of those fast twitch fibers. He gave me a lot more cadence and turnover work than what I had done with Jeff. That was one thing. We didn't do a whole lot of marathon pace stuff, which was interesting, and it made me very, very nervous going into race day because I was like, Randy, I was like, we've literally done 3 marathon paced workouts. It might have been more than that, but it wasn't a lot, and it made me really nervous. But leading up to the race, we were doing a lot of threshold work. Midweek thresholds. He actually put me on a 10-day cycle. So we would do, for instance, maybe cadence strides on day 1, threshold work on day 4, strides on day 6 or 7, long run on day 9. And so that's kind of how we would cycle through. And I think just having that different stimulus, working at this different stimulus and this training block, I think just helped me have that breakthrough moment. But um, double threshold sessions. I was running sometimes, Christian, I was running 16 miles in a workout total, with the warm up, cool down, and everything. And then I'd come back in the evening and I'd do a 4 or 5 mile double. So I was putting in some really big days. And, I think I said around, also my volume was a little bit higher as well. Randy had me sitting around 80 to 90 miles a week, which obviously I built up to that over the years. I think when Jeff and I first started, he and I, we were running a lot of 60 to 70 mile weeks. And then, so obviously I just progressed. I was able to handle more volume. Um, I'm trying to think of what else Randy and I did. That was kind of the basis of our training though. Lots of steady state runs. We also did lots of steady state runs. Actually my last tune up long run, we did 24 miles at a steady pace, which was about 15 to 20 seconds slower than goal marathon pace. But he had me doing, and this is interesting. This is one of his favorite workouts. He had me doing uh, pops on the nines or surges on the nines. So 9 minutes, 19, 29, so on and so forth throughout the whole 24 mile run. I was doing these surges, 1 minute surges at threshold pace. So it was very interesting, man. I just came out really fit, really.
I like to hear this. It's cool.
Jeff will even say like, there's a million ways to skin a cat. You just got to make sure you're using a sharp knife. And
Yeah.
so there's just
But
so many different philosophies and coaching modalities out there. So
and one thing that I really like when like the way you are talking about this is that this is just like a lot of marathon blocks or a lot of training stacked on top of each other, right? Like so and sometimes when you hear athletes when they change coaches, they might be like, oh yeah, it was this coach that just changed my life. But what I appreciate about what you're saying is that the things that you've done, and like we could probably backtrack it to when you were a kid too, right? Like active, like although you had some years of some non-athletic experiences in between there, you still kind of laid that foundation somehow for sport, physical activity, so that when you decided to change things, you had a foundation there, and then you started working on your own, and then you started working with Jeff, and that helped. And then with Randy, like all of this just kind of ended up being a great foundation. And then Randy helped you to get the best out of that foundation and into that marathon where you did a 2:36. And I appreciate you talking about it in that way instead of saying that, oh, it was this exact one thing that I did. Because I think it's easy to do that too, because that's what it can feel like sometimes, right? It's like, oh yeah, what I did the last week or the last month, that is what made me run fast, but that's never really the case.
no, absolutely not. And like I said, I think that I was due for a breakthrough performance. I'd been sitting at that 240
Yeah.
threshold for so long, and you know, I, I I would not be the runner that I am today. I wouldn't be the coach that I am today without Jeff. Jeff's still a great. I mean, he's still a close friend of mine. I just went out and trained with him and the Bat City Track Club like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and so he's been a great coach and mentor to me. And like you said, he told me that before Indy. We did, he does his shakeout run at Indianapolis, and it's a big thing for Cunningham running. And I went and seen him before the race, and he was like, he told me, he's like, dude, you're ready. He's like, he's like, you might run 2:35 tomorrow. And that's when he was like, I know you've been working with somebody else, but he's like, your fitness isn't in silos. You've consistently just been building, one block on top of the other. And so he's like, I think you're going to have a great day out there tomorrow. And so, just hearing him say that, believing me, like the mental aspect heading into race day of like, okay, I've changed up my coaching, I'm doing some things differently, and just being encouraged and from somebody who's, so respected in the sport, say like, hey, you're going to have a day out there tomorrow. I think all those things, man, it was a perfect storm for me to go out and do what I did last year.
Yeah, I love Jeff. He's great.
He is great.
Yeah. So this was November or December. Was it November
So
2024?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's exactly a year ago. And then somewhere in between here, you also ran across the US. Will you say something about that project? And I mean, it's not like you're the only one who's ever done it, but I still want to ask you, where did that idea come from?
Um, well, we're talking about before we hop into that, Christian, we're talking about just training and things that's helped me got to, give me that's got me to where I am today. Uh One of the things that I have done a good job of throughout the years that I usually fail to mention in conversations is, dude, just constant strength and mobility work. Like all everything that from 2018 till to where I'm at today, I've had zero significant injuries. And a lot of that comes from obviously just training intelligently, being in tune with my body, working with a coach. But a lot of strength and mobility work is something that I'm really very consistent and dedicated to. And so, I try to get into the gym 2 to 3 times a week. I try to, I have a mobility routine that I normally do a couple times a week after hard sessions. And so, coming out of Indianapolis, I took a week off, and it was right back to the drawing board. I reached out to a local coach here who specializes in ultra marathons. Her name's Mary Kate. Shout out, coach. Um, the idea to run across America has always been in the back of my mind. After doing the Trail of Tears run in 2019, my wife and I actually biked most of the Pacific Coast Highway from Canada to Mexico. And that's not something I talk a whole lot about. I just completely
Wow.
forget all about that. But yeah, we started right at the Canadian border. I think I biked around 80% of Highway 1, the PCH, and we finished in Chula Vista, California. Um, and so like doing those two things, the Trail of Tears, the PCH, I love being out on the road. I love experiencing new places, different communities, different, like cultures within, different states and everything. And so that was always in the back of my mind. And, we get one shot at this to go out and do the things that we want to do in life. And so, the great quote of the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today, right? And
Yeah.
so, oftentimes, man, that is one of the biggest mistakes that we make is telling ourselves we'll have more time or we'll get around to it next year. And so I'm just a big believer in that. Like, the time's now. Like, sign up for the damn race now. Do the thing now. Start the business right now. Stop waiting. And so that's the mindset that I had. I wanted to go out and I wanted to run across America, and I reached out to Mary Beth, and I was like, "Hey, I wanna do this. Will you help me?" And she was like, "Absolutely. Let's do it." And so I started training for the Run Across America the end of November of 2024, about 3 weeks after Indy. And, so I trained from end of November, all the way to the beginning of March. So not a whole lot of time, 3-ish months, give or take. And, immediately we went into just building up the volume. Um,
Yeah, because how do you train for that? That's something that I've been thinking about a lot. We're gonna get into William Gooch and his run across across Australia later on in this conversation. But I remember watching his series, and I was like, how do you prepare for something like this? Because it's impossible to simulate the same load, the same thing. Like with a marathon, if you want to, you can go out and you can run a marathon. You're like, oh, okay, I got the distance down now. You can't really do that when you're running 66 days straight, like you did with your run across the US.
yeah, no, it was the number one goal that we always had when we check in with one another each week is how many miles can we safely run this week? Like how can we push the body, but without going past that point of diminishing returns, right? And so we kind of look back on my training in the past with marathons and like, okay, well, Caleb, you've done 80 to 90 miles a week with speed work, with lots of quality, with these faster quality sessions in. So if we pull that intensity back, how much more can we raise just the overall volume? And so that was kind of the mindset heading into the training block. So I was like, okay, if I'm doing 80 to 90 miles a week with a lot of intensity, then let's start out. We started out, I think, around 80 to 90 the first week. And it was kind of a collaborative effort. Like, she was not a dictator in her training. She was like, we've never worked together. You know your body better than I do. As coaches, we got to trust the athlete. And so I was like, I feel like I could make this jump to 100. And so we went from, I think it was like 85 to 100 to 110, 120, and we just started climbing. Um and every week we would check in like, okay, how are you feeling? And we got to make sure we're listening to the body, any niggles, any whispers. That was one of her things. Like, we can't let that whisper turn into a scream. We got to pay attention to those things. And so, just be talking back and forth. That was really that communication was really important for me to stay healthy and also be trained at a high level. During that time, we continued to keep some strides in there. Um, we did that for the first probably almost all the way through until my last 3 biggest weeks. Cause then it was just like, I was so beat up and so, I was right on the brink of injury, I think, that any type of intensity might have sent me over the edge. So it was
Yeah.
we were trying to keep the strides in there just for running efficiency and economy reasons, just getting a little bit of cadence and turnover work. And so we would do heel strides just because it was a little easier on the body. Um, I would do some sort of fartlek sometimes, like very early on in the first 6 weeks. I think we're doing like a fartlek or maybe some 400s. I got a little crazy and I did 8 by 800 one time, and she was like, "Dude, what the heck are you doing?" I was like, "Yeah, that was a little risky. I probably shouldn't have done that workout, but luckily I didn't get injured." So it was, just a gradual increase. You can't simulate running 320 miles a week in training without running a huge risk for getting injured. And so we were trying to just, I'd never been to 100 and 140, 150, 160, 170 miles a week ever in my career. So like let's try to do that. Um I knew that if I tried to get too aggressive with training, that I ran the risk of just completely taking myself out and not being able to do the event at all. So that was our mindset, was like, okay, how can we run the most amount of miles with the least amount of, risk for injury, and just get you as fit as we possibly can and get you to the start line healthy. That was the overall goal.
So you did that run across the US in 66 days, right?
Yeah, it was just,
S-
I'll throw out the stats here. Started in San Diego, ran across 8 states, finished in Wilmington, North Carolina, 62 days of running, 4 rest days, so 66 days total. I covered 2,870 miles and almost 110,000 feet of vert during the run.
And so how, like, on average ish, I probably could have done the math here if I was very good at math, but how much did you average every day?
So if you, okay, I might get a little shade for this one,
Danny
but
Danny Perkins calls it public math or something like that, and that he shouldn't do that. And I'm not doing that either. I wouldn't do this even if we weren't recording. So
um, if you, so the days of running, not counting the rest days, I averaged right at 45-ish miles a day. So if you count the rest
yeah,
days, just overall time, it was 43 miles a day.
yeah, wow. Because that is, I guess, the one thing that even though your mileage was high going into it, you had never been able to have that kind of mileage in a week that you would have for those 60 days, right? Or were you
Right.
able to simulate that? No.
No, we didn't. But I know, like, moving forward, we're going to have now that I know that I can handle that type of mileage. I think to break Guja's record, we're gonna have to get a little bit more aggressive with training. But that's going to come from my coach and all that stuff. But yeah, I had never experienced 300 plus miles in a week. So that was crazy, and with all the vert too. I mean, that was a once I hit got close to New Mexico, dude, there was so much climbing. I mean, and the injuries started popping up, Achilles tendonitis, shin splints in both legs. It got pretty brutal out there for a little while.
Yeah, because now you talked or touched on a few things that I've again been very curious about when I've been watching these series with people doing this, and one is just like when heading into that, and like you said, you didn't really know how your body would react, and one thing is like if you did this for a week, but you're doing it for 2 months, and the you are so prone to injuries and stuff like that. How are you able to make that decision that I'm gonna push through and this is gonna be painful versus this is very stupid, I might never be able to run again? Because that is also a risk with all of this, right? Like when you're pushing your body like that. And I assume that if you lost running now, that would be kind of critical.
Yeah. Um, like I said, man, I've been very fortunate to avoid any type of major injuries throughout the years. I'm very in tune with my body. I've had a great team around me, a great PT. Throughout my journey, I would check in with her like anytime something significant would pop up during the run. Um, and honestly, I had kind of backed myself into a corner with the amount of money that I had to raise to make the run happen, all the people's time that they committed to come out and support me, my crew, my wife, my family, everything. So honestly, it was finish this thing or die. It was adapt or die. And
But 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 did you feel like, or at some point there, did you feel like, or have the thought that this is stupid, this is not smart?
um I had a couple moments like that out there.
I'm not saying that you weren't. I'm not saying that you were stupid, but it's just like with all the injuries. Because if you were training for a marathon, like if we were to just look at it from a marathon
Uh-huh.
perspective, and you had any of those like for a day or two throughout a week, you would probably take it easy and be like, "Oh, I have to, adjust my training, do some cross training just to make sure I'm good here." And then when you're doing this, you're like, "Oh, I'm in a lot of pain now, but hopefully it's gonna be better when I wake up tomorrow." I don't know what the thought process is like.
No, it was definitely we hear it all the time. Our bodies are amazing machines and capable of so much more that we give them credit for. And so those days where I was really doubting or questioning, like physically, can I do this? I wasn't in excruciating pain or in pain that was worrisome that it was causing lasting damage, or like I was running with a stress fracture or anything like that. Honestly, it was really surprising how well I held up, considering, how many miles I was covering, the pace that I was covering. Like my overall moving pace for the entire run was 11:57. So I mean, I was moving at a good clip, and my body was just. I mean, honestly, it was a miracle that it held up as good as it did. But my PT, she flew out in the middle of the run around Arkansas, and I was still dealing with some of the Achilles tendonitis and shin splint issues. And she was checking me out, running me through some tests and screens and everything. And I was like, "How bad is it?" And she was like, "Well, if you weren't currently running across America, I would tell you need to take about 3 weeks off, no running at all." I was like, "Well, that's not going to happen. We got to finish this thing." But that's good to know. But yeah, I mean, we definitely ran through a lot of that, and it was just honestly, Christian, um, it was me just telling myself each and every day, like, you're running for something greater than yourself. You're not dying. Your leg's not broke. Yeah, you're in pain, you're hurting, but we can push through this. And most oftentimes, I think that we shortchange ourselves on our ability. We shortchange ourselves on what we can really accomplish. And the first sign of discomfort or pain or something, we kind of we dip out and we'll stop. Now, obviously, that definitely is really important to do, but in a extreme challenge like this, like, I mean, we really can crank out and do a lot more than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah, that has been my thought too when I've been following people doing what you did. And um, I want to also talk a bit more about, because I know that you were running for something that was a bit bigger than yourself, right? So I want to talk more about that as well. But before we do, I want to talk about your next challenge. And we've both of us, we kind of name dropped William Huge here and his record running across Australia. I know that that is a project that is coming up. Will you say something about that, the motivation to do that, but also the timeline of that project?
Um, yeah, so 2026 goals for me is two 232 marathon in February, into February, multi-day event of some sort, sometime, shortly after the marathon. And then I want to go into the run across Australia world record attempt training, which will probably, that's probably want to start kicking off sometime around April, May. And then I'm planning on going down and attempting to break Googe's record, which is Perth to Sydney. So you're going west to east across Australia. It's around 2,400 miles, and the record's 34 days and 9 hours, which I think comes out to be 65 miles a day. So just a little over, what is that, 103, 104K a day, something like that.
Yeah.
So that would be the world record. The reason that I'm doing this, man, again, like, I'm about to be 40 years old. I'll be 40 next year. Um, I feel like I'm in my window.
Still younger than Kipchoge.
Yeah, still younger than Kipchoge. And I feel like I'm just getting ready to start entering my prime when it comes to endurance. And I know my best years are ahead of me, which is crazy to say, being 39 years old. But I know I haven't scratched the surface of what I'm truly capable of. I feel like I've been tooling in obscurity, and I really want to make a name for myself in the running scene this year, man. I've been working my ass off for years and years and years, and training and doing the work, and just appreciating the delayed gratification. And so, that record is very appealing to me. I know I have the ability to go out and get it. And so I'm calling my shot, and I'm talking about it, and I want to go down, and I want to raise money for my nonprofit, which we'll talk about here in a second. And also, I'm getting ready to start a scholarship fund for high school athletes, to help them with their college tuition and room and board and things like that. And so I'll be raising money for those things when I'm running across Australia as well.
That's really cool. So when in 2026 is that you're planning on doing this?
We're looking at August or September, which would be springtime down
Uh,
there.
I should join you for a bit then, because I'm doing the Sydney Marathon in August, like end of August. So maybe we can meet up at some point.
Dude, that would be so sick. We should definitely do that.
Oh.
It would.
We're planning on having 3 weeks there and traveling around Australia at the same time. So that would be cool.
We got to chat about itinerary. I want to know how you're planning your trip, because that's something I want to do as
Yeah.
well.
Let's do that, because that would be fun. We could do some live podcasts. I can film you a little bit. I assume that you have a film crew with you when you're doing this.
I will. We're going to make a documentary. I don't know if we're going to do a YouTube series or a documentary. We're just kicking around the ideas. I just formed the Australian crew group chat the other day. Like, it's starting to get more real.
Awesome.
I'm reaching out for sponsors, and honestly, if I could plan Australia, how sick would it be for me to finish the day before Sydney Marathon?
That would be so cool. You should definitely do that. That's gonna give you a lot of attention. And I had the social media manager or marketing manager of the Sydney Marathon. He was on the podcast a few weeks ago. You guys should definitely talk to each other. Maybe you can even make that into like a bit of a part of the Sydney Marathon buildup.
That would be so sick, man. Maybe come on and talk about the journey and maybe do like a live podcast or something after. Dude, that's a great idea.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, go for it. You should do that. So when William Gooch did this last, or is it a year ago now, or was it the
May.
spring?
He finished in May.
Yeah, in May.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he did that, he was or not obviously, but he was heavily criticized because some people thought that he was cheating, and people didn't like that he was smoking cigarettes at the end of the day and drinking beers and all of that. I have to ask you, what is your approach to this? Do you think that you'll be smoking cigarettes at the end of the day?
Oh yeah, probably. I mean, I'm a smoker from way back. I always smoked menthol cigarettes back in my wild days. I love earning a good post run dart. I think that's totally yeah, that's a vibe, man. I love it. Now
That's
I
cool.
won't
So
be
you will
drinking.
fit into that.
I probably won't be drinking beers, but I'll definitely have a good NA or something at the end of the day. But we'll save the celebration until we finish. But definitely some post run darts going to be happening down there.
Cool. Okay, so we've been talking for 1 hour and 9 minutes here already, so we need to start, ending our conversation soon. But I am very curious to hear more about this nonprofit of yours, and I know that is that has become a big part of your running in all of these projects. So you making a name for yourself, like you said, is obviously a big part of also making a name of your nonprofit. So what is the nonprofit all about?
Yeah. So whenever I got out of jail, Christian, I realized that there was a need in my community for a men's recovery home. So guys coming out of incarceration, rehab, detox, to have a place where they could get on their feet, they could have housing, they could have support with their recovery, with employment. And so we founded the nonprofit in 2021. We started doing a lot of outreach events, just like hosting dinners for the community, things of that nature. And it's just slowly progressed into what it is today. We have something called the Gadoogie House, which is a Cherokee word that means community. And that's whenever you see somebody, like the concept of community isn't just where you live. It is whenever you see somebody struggling or hurting, we come together and pick that person up and try to get them on their feet. And so that's the idea of community here in our culture, in our language. And so we opened up the Gadoogie House a little over a year ago. It's a 6 to 9 month program, transitional living home. We've got 8 guys in the program currently. We're at capacity. They get transportation to and from their jobs, recovery support meetings, therapy. We also are including fitness into their program. We got a men's league basketball team that we have. We play men's league games on Sundays. We started going to the gym here recently again. Um, so yeah, I mean that's something that's very important to us to try to give back, and running can be such a selfish sport. It's all about us and our times and our achievements. And I wanted to make sure that I was trying to use something I'm so passionate about and attach it to something that it means a lot to me in my life and purpose. And so that I wanted to intertwine those two things and use what God's given me and my talent, my ability, my passion for this, and just try to give back and inspire the guys that are in our house and use sacrificing my body, put my body on the line to raise money and to raise awareness for what we're doing here in our community and the guys struggling with addiction and mental health issues. And so, we've been trying to do that more with my runs.
I think your dad was right when he said that you were gonna do great things, and I feel like it's such a full circle moment, and it's never a good thing to go through addiction the way that you did, but looking at what you're doing today, it's hard to not say that it seems like it's been a meaning with all of it, and that you are now, changing other people's lives. And I guess I'm in no position to say on behalf of a lot of people, but at least from me, I just want to say thank you to your dad for believing in you, and your mom for believing in you, and then for you believing in yourself, because I've really appreciated this conversation, and I hope that a lot of people will listen to it and be inspired by it. So I really, really appreciate everything that you shared, Kallup.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and share my heart and everything. And I know that this was more of a um, life story today, more so than running, training philosophy and all those things. But I think that, our stories are important. It can be the blueprint
Very.
and the thing that helps gets other people out of a difficult situation. And so I appreciate the opportunity to let me come on and share that today.
Thank you. And I'll definitely have you back on, and we'll have to try to play in Australia next year.
We definitely got to make that happen. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a great idea. Let's make it happen for sure.
Yeah. Let's make it happen. And also, big shout out to Life in Stride again. I made a shout out in a couple of episodes ago, but you were on there. You were recording yesterday, right? And I realized that during our chat, and obviously I've heard your story before because I was listening to one of the episodes, but sometimes when you listen to podcasts, you don't really notice the names. So I just, while you were telling this story, I was like, oh yeah, I've heard this story before. And that's obviously with Life in Stride boys. So head over to their podcast to listen to more about you. And you had 4 episodes now with them, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, we just recorded episode 200 last night. It was my 4th time on the show. So shout out to those guys. They're doing a great thing with the conversations that they're having as well, man.
Yeah, shout out to the boys, OTQ boys. Okay, thank you, Kallup, and have a good one. Safe to say, I was left inspired by Kallup when talking to him. This is just crazy, and I feel like he proves that things are possible. And I really hope that if anyone finds themselves in the same situation, or feel like they are heading into that direction, or trying to get out of something like that, that this episode can serve as a reminder that everything is possible. In the next episode, we're having Lucy Scott with us. She is the youngest ever 7-star finisher in the World Majors. I had a great chat with her because what's interesting is that she did all of this within a year and a half, and she didn't have any running experience prior to this. So as you can imagine, this was a big challenge, and it was not without problems or minor injuries, or maybe even bigger injuries. I really am excited to share that episode with you. I think that can serve as an inspiration for those of you who are, contemplating doing your first marathon, or if you want to do one of the majors or all of them. This is a great episode because Lucy's recently done all of them, and she can share which ones were the best. You listen to the Marathon Podcast, brought to you by Wallace Studio.